We've decided to move. Move. I was puzzled by the sudden announcement from Jason. We've been looking for a while now. You know, this house isn't a good location, but it's old, right? It's too embarrassing to invite friends over. And with you living here, everyone feels like they have to walk on eggshells. The eldest son and his wife spoke their minds freely. It seems they are planning to move to a luxury apartment. When I asked where they were moving, Rika replied with a smug look. We're not telling anyone our address. It was a provocative way to speak. After all, I didn't want anything to do with them, but regardless of Rika, Jason is my son, and Mike is my husband. When I asked what they meant by strangers, Jason began to explain smoothly. Dad says he's gonna divorce Mom. Divorce? Yeah. Dad's got his eye on another woman. She looks average, but she's younger and apparently nicer than Mom. I knew I was being taken advantage of by Mike and Jason for household chores, but I never imagined I was being disrespected to this extent. My fists clenched, trembling with anger. I could feel my blood boiling. I wanted them to leave immediately. So, it's divorce with your part-time husband then? At my words, Rika covered her mouth, and Mike froze. Stop talking nonsense, you old hag. Jason alone seemed not to grasp the situation. They would soon regret their choices. Even if they come crying and begging for forgiveness, I will never forgive them. I am Mary Taylor, 54 years old. It's been nearly 30 years since I married Mike. Mike might be unreliable and a bit too hands-off, but he's broad-minded and respects what I want to do. That's why I decided to marry him. And a few years after we got married, our eldest son Jason was born. Mike was thrilled when Jason was born. Though I was left to handle the child rearing, I had a faint hope that becoming a father might make him a bit more dependable. For a while after giving birth, I harbored such gentle expectations. But Mike never changed. Hey, he's crying. Every time Jason cried, Mike would call me as if it was someone else's problem. At first, I also tried to patiently reason with Mike. Look, Jason seems so happy when Mike holds him. Way to go, Dad. I praised him even for holding our son just a few times a day. I hoped it would boost his confidence as a father. But it didn't work out as I had hoped. This isn't for me. Mary's better at it. Like that, Mike pushed both housework and childcare onto me. I'm going back to work too, can't you help a little? I can't do it all by myself. I protested several times, but Mike would respond as if it were only natural. I trust you, Mary. That's why I leave it to you. Plus, I work too, right? I'm enduring the hardship, so it's only right that the one who's good at it should handle the housework and childcare. Mike had a way of saying convenient things and throwing all the troublesome tasks my way. It wasn't that I was good at it. I just kept at it, got used to it through repetition. Despite trying everything I could, Mike never changed, and Jason grew up, became an adult, and left home when he got a job. At that time, I felt more relief than loneliness. I was relieved that there was one less person to take care of. Fortunately, my career was also progressing smoothly. Mike still didn't do any housework, but by then, I had completely gotten used to it. Years later, we faced some challenges with Mike's job, but we were living together, just the two of us. It was relatively peaceful, I think. Then one day, out of the blue, Jason announced, I'm getting married. When he got married, Jason was 24 years old. It felt a bit early, but since he was serious about his work, we were completely in celebration mode. When Jason first brought Rika home, we were over the moon. Welcome. I'm so happy. We're looking forward to having you with us. Yes, thank you. I look forward to it too. Rika was a bright and cheerful good kid. Jason's workplace and apartment were far from our house, so we wouldn't see each other often, but I hoped we could get along well when we did meet. I was the only one getting carried away. Jason's words suddenly snapped me back to reality. We're gonna live here together. Caught off guard by his tone, which sounded more like a decision than a suggestion, I was taken aback. Live here? Why? You're newlyweds. What about your jobs? I quit my job. My boss was a jerk. So, we're planning to look for something around here. There's bound to be something, right? His carefree attitude made me panic. Is Rika okay with this? Moving in with your mother-in-law right after getting married is something I'd definitely hate. And to have your husband suddenly jobless must be unsettling, to say the least. Worried, I asked, but Rika's response was unexpectedly calm. I'm not good at housework. This will be a big help. It was as if she had beaten me to the punch. This was basically a declaration of not doing any housework. I have my own things to deal with. I can't take on everything. For the sake of us all, reconsidering living together would be best. Despite my repeated objections to the eldest son and his wife, they were set on moving in, and so it happened. Living together turned out to be exactly what I had imagined in some ways. Firstly, not long after we started living together, Jason managed to find a job. The pay wasn't great, but it was close to home. Soon after, Rika also started working part-time. With both of them securing some income, I felt a bit relieved, but there was a problem. As expected, I ended up handling all the housework alone. Cooking, laundry, cleaning, shopping, you name it. I'm the first to leave the house in the morning and the last to return. Yet, no one else seemed to lift a finger. Mom, I'm hungry. Dinner ready yet? Jason would ask while playing with his smartphone, and Rika would add, is today's menu something quick to make, while flipping through TV channels. Being asked such things by both of them right after I came back from overtime work showed how much they took advantage of me. I think they were taking me for granted. After all, Rika is a part-timer, so she has more time at home and more free time than I do. She usually gets back by late afternoon. At the very least, I wish Rika would take care of preparing dinner. It was a bit difficult to say, but I made up my mind and told Rika. Mike and I will manage on our own. Could you at least prepare your own meals? Rika frowned and looked at me with a puzzled expression. Then, she said something unbelievable. Why do I have to do it? For a moment, I was the one taken aback. Why would there need to be a reason to prepare one's own meal? Confused, I gave a reasonable explanation. Well, because you guys get home earlier. Rika seemed unsatisfied, staring at me with a glare. Even if we get home early, we're tired, you know? Why would you say something so terrible to me when I'm just trying to rest after getting home? It felt like I was talking to an alien. I wanted to throw her words right back at her. In fact, I blurted it out. Well, I'm tired too. Rika just scowled and tilted her head. So what? Excuse me? Isn't it a mother's duty to push through for her children, regardless of how tired she is? Why are you trying to push that duty onto me? Such a ridiculous argument. What age of children are we talking about? I'm not asking her to cook for someone else's kids. I'm asking her and her husband, Jason, to prepare their own meals. Sure, if Jason got home earlier, I'd ask him. But Rika is overwhelmingly the first to get home. I never imagined being refused to cook for herself and her own husband. Maybe it was my fault for spoiling them. Having reflected, I decided to tighten up and be a bit stricter than before. Afterwards, I repeatedly reminded both Rika and Jason to pitch in with household chores, not just meals, but they showed no sign of change. I guess my flaw is acting whenever something needs to be done. It's in my nature, I can't just leave things be. Thanks to that, I've been pushing my not-so-young body to its limits, running around doing both household chores and my job. At this rate, I might end up collapsing one day. I desperately consulted with Mike, but he said, it's not my problem. Just keep at it, as if he didn't care. No one was willing to change, and it seemed I had no choice but to do everything myself. One day, when I was fed up with the daily grind, I noticed the room looked a bit tidier when I came back from work. Upon closer inspection, I saw that the clothes and bags of Jason and Rika, which would usually be scattered on the floor, were not there. How unusual. I wondered if Jason or Rika had tidied up. With a mix of surprise and joy, I opened the door to the living room, and there was Jason, standing right in front of me. Whoa! You scared me. I'm home. Without even a welcome back, Jason bluntly announced. We've decided to move out. Move out? As I was trying to make sense of it, Rika popped her head in, grinning next to Jason. The two of them exchanged meaningful looks and started giggling. It was an unpleasant feeling. We've been looking for a while. You know, this house is in a good location, but it's old, right? It's too embarrassing to invite friends over. And with you, everyone feels like they have to walk on eggshells. What do you mean by that? After all, they were the ones who moved in without asking, despite my objections. I had opposed it many times. After they started living here, they didn't contribute to the living expenses or do any chores. Now they have the nerve to complain about the house after making themselves at home? I felt my stomach churn. I had a lot I wanted to say, but I tried to keep my emotions in check. Feel free to move out. Frankly, it's what I've been wishing for. But I won't tolerate you insulting this house. Apologize. Actually, this house originally belonged to my parents. It's filled with memories of my parents and me. It may be old, but that doesn't mean it deserves to be ridiculed by them. Rika, still half smiling, said. No way. We're not ridiculing it. We're just stating the facts. Geez. You're so paranoid, it must be hard living like that, isn't it? I felt like my head was about to erupt, and I could barely keep my hands to myself. Why does she provoke me so much? The way you're talking is demeaning. Ew, scary. Rika made a cutesy voice and hid behind Jason's back. Looking at Jason, he sighed as if he was fed up, which only made my anger swell even more. But I clenched my teeth and somehow managed to hold back. It's because of how you are, Mom, that we decided to move out. You're always nagging and on edge. This was too much to ignore. Are you saying it's my fault? It's because you leave everything to others no matter how many times you're told. You never clean up after yourselves and always making demands. It's understandable to be irritated with such a lifestyle. I'm not your maid, you know. But you're a mother, right? A mother is supposed to take care of her children, that's her duty. I remember Rika saying something like that too. Do you even realize how old you are? You're adults, acting all entitled. My tone involuntarily became sharper. I couldn't stand them waiving their rights as children when they are far from being helpless babies. Whoa, scary. Menopause much? Well, whatever. Anyway, we're moving to a luxury apartment. A place you could never afford even if you worked your entire life. Jason boasted with a smug look. But what concerned me more was, luxury apartment? For the past few months, the couple hadn't been paying their share of the living expenses. They could have saved that money. However, neither Rika nor Jason were high earners. It seemed unlikely they could afford a luxury apartment in just a few months. Where did you get such money? Jason eagerly responded as if he had been waiting for this moment. It's Dad. Mike? Yeah. We're planning to get support from Dad. The three of us, me, Rika, and Dad, will live there. I couldn't keep up with the developments, struggling to understand as Jason happily continued. When we invited Dad, he agreed so easily. It's a shame after all these years, but he prefers being with my young son and his wife over an old hag. This was honestly a shock. It's been nearly 30 years since Mike and I got married. I thought we had a good relationship at the beginning, but ever since Jason was born, we gradually started to drift apart, and recently our conversations had dwindled. Still, I never imagined he would leave without saying anything, especially not with Jason and Rika. What are you going to do? Try to stop Dad? Well, I don't think you stand a chance, Jason said cheerfully. Seeing Jason's happy face and hearing his voice, something inside me snapped. I had endured it because they were family. I accepted the unreasonable, complaining all the while. Maybe I had hoped that if I kept saying something, they would eventually change. I was a fool for thinking so. This child will never change. And Mike, the father, who left everything about Jason to me. I realized it was useless to expect anything from him. When are you moving? Actually, we've already moved everything. The new place is fully furnished with new appliances and furniture. It seems the plan had progressed without my knowledge. I see. You mentioned an apartment, but where are you moving to? The apartment is in the city center. Stop. Rika cut off Jason's attempt to reveal the address with a high-pitched voice. Jason, you can't. Oh my. We're going to be strangers from now on. Rika then turned to me and stated clearly. We won't be giving our address to strangers. What do you mean? While I didn't want anything to do with them, Rika aside, Jason is my son, and Mike is my husband. Seeing my puzzled face, Rika showed me her biggest smile yet. Jason, why don't you tell her? Prompted by Rika, Jason began to speak smoothly. Dad's gonna divorce you. Divorce? Yeah. Dad's got his eye on someone. She's average looking but younger and apparently nicer than Mom. He's totally smitten, spending a lot and really trying his best. Thinking about it, divorce makes more sense than separation. Especially if there really is another woman involved. I knew I was being taken advantage of by Mike and Jason for chores and such, but I never imagined I was being so disrespected. My fists clenched, trembling with anger. I could feel my blood boiling. I wanted them out immediately. Just then, the living room door opened, and there was Mike, looking puzzled. He had just gotten home. What's with this heavy atmosphere? What happened? Mike looked back and forth between me and Jason, in high spirits, replied. Welcome back, Dad. Just telling Mom everything. Mike avoided eye contact with me, looking uncomfortable. Unlike Jason, who seemed utterly unconcerned, Mike appeared somewhat guilty. Guilt towards me after so many years together? Or was there another reason? So, you're moving out? And I heard something about wanting a divorce? Oh, yeah. Jason and Rika think it's for the best if we get a divorce. Huh. I don't have any men in mind, unlike what you're implying. Well, that's... Talking behind my back with Jason and Rika, but acting this way in front of me. His indecisive, too nice nature probably won't ever change. I wanted to throw more sarcasm his way, but there were more pressing matters. Now that things have come to this, we need to proceed with their plan before they change their minds. So, you're moving out, right? Then let's get the divorce papers done today. No, that's... Yeah, let's do that, Dad. Right. Let's get all this troublesome stuff out of the way quickly. Mike seemed hesitant, but pushed by his son and daughter-in-law, we all ended up signing the divorce papers and headed to the city hall together. I intended to go alone, but Jason insisted we all go together because it'd be a problem if you just pretended to file it. The green paper in my hand. Submitting this means we're divorced. While it felt liberating, reflecting on the past 30 years made me feel incredibly conflicted. Mike was silent, his expression unreadable. Only Jason and Rika seemed relieved. Now we're strangers. Thanks for everything until now. Jason exclaimed, even though we hadn't submitted it yet. Even if we divorce, Jason and I are still parent and child. Are you sure you want to cut ties like this? Yeah. Of course. We can't stand the idea of you coming after us for care or anything later. His words stirred something unpleasant in me. No matter how hard things get for me in the future, I would never turn to you after all the humiliating things you've done. It's outrageous. As we were about to submit it, standing in front of the after-hours counter, I looked back at Mike for the last time. Well, I'm going to submit it now. Okay. Mike's hesitant demeanor only frustrated me more as I handed in the divorce papers. The moment I did this, we would become strangers. Taking a deep breath, as if to shake off everything, I said. So, it's divorce with a part-time husband. I heard Jason and Rika gasp behind me, but I didn't look back. The clerk briefly checked the divorce papers and accepted them. If there are any issues, they'll contact us later. It should be fine, though. Well, I have places to be. As I was about to leave Jason, Rika, and Mike behind, Rika suddenly grabbed my arm.
Mother-in-law, what did you mean by that earlier?
Her smile twitched. It was unsurprised. Understandably confused after hearing such a thing. While I understood how she felt, I feigned ignorance. Oh, Rika, calling me mother-in-law. We're strangers now, remember? And what do you mean by earlier? Speaking coldly, Rika looked at me hesitantly. Unusually for her, she seemed to lack confidence and peered at me as if trying to gauge my reaction. It was clear from her expression. She had heard what I said earlier. She didn't want to believe it and came to confirm. They will realize their mistake and surely regret it later. Thinking this gave me a slight sense of relief, and I couldn't help but smile a bit.
So, about that part-time thing.
Rika stammered, and I said with the biggest smile I could muster.
Oh. About Mike? I've kept it a secret until now, but Mike has been working part-time at a convenience store. Isn't that commendable?
Mike, who was standing behind Rika, widened his eyes and froze, while Rika muttered no way. And covered her mouth. A natural reaction. No one would have guessed that Mike, who left home every morning, was going to a part-time job. In reality, he spent his mornings wandering or at the job center and worked part-time from the afternoon until evening. Rika was shocked to learn this bombshell, and Mike turned pale, realizing everything was out. Only Jason was laughing carelessly.
Stop talking nonsense, old woman.
He must have thought I was bluffing. Looking completely at ease and sneering.
Mike working part-time? That's impossible.
Well, it's true. Right, Mike? Since Mike retired last year, he had been reluctant to work and had been unemployed for a long time. I convinced him to start the part-time job about half a year ago. Jason and Rika moved in after that, so they didn't know. We kept it a secret until they noticed, considering Mike's pride.
Well, yeah. Really?
Mike nodded, sweating. And it seemed Rika finally grasped the situation. Jason and Rika's faces turned pale and they looked down. They should face reality and regret it. I no longer had any sympathy for them. They used me and looked down on me, eager to cut ties quickly. Whether they squabble or suffer, I don't care. I was about to leave quietly when Jason called out, stopping me.
So, how have we been living up till now? The expenses for 4 people, for several months.
You're the one who didn't contribute to the living expenses, and you're asking that? I was so astonished that words failed me for a moment. With effort, I managed to say,
I was the one earning.
Jason blinked incredulously.
Huh? That's impossible. Supporting a household of 4. There's no way you could do that. You know I've been working from morning till night, right? Then why do you think it's impossible? Because you're a woman. Even if you're a full-time employee, your income would be limited, right? Eh? You earn that much?
Yes. Since becoming an executive, I've been receiving a decent compensation package.
Executive?
Jason's eyes darted around. He couldn't believe the person he looked down upon was an executive. Relying on a father who turned out to be a part-timer, and dismissing a mother who actually had a high income.
If you had told us. Didn't Dad know either?
Yes, you and your father always expect others to handle things. That's why I couldn't say.
I see. But this is a relief then.
What is? Jason patted my shoulder, smiling.
If Dad goes back to that house, and Mom comes to our apartment. Huh?
Such a convenient narrative. Abandoning the father when they thought there was no money, and now trying to mooch off the mother they know has money. The thought of this being my own child, raised by me, fills me with both despair and anger.
There's no way that can happen. Plus, I just confirmed with you, didn't I? We're strangers now, right? But then who's going to pay? Not just for the apartment. We bought all the appliances and furniture on loans.
Jason looked at me, pleading, his voice quivering.
How long do you plan to act like a child? Clean up your own mess. If you put your mind to it, you can figure it out. For example, if Rika worked more, that alone would increase your income.
Glancing sideways, I saw Rika flinch. Her face was pale.
This is...
Jason collapsed to his knees, finally understanding the gravity of their situation. Next to him, Rika also crouched down, but then seemed to have an idea.
That's right. Severance pay.
Rika's eyes lit up as she told Jason.
Your dad quit just a few months ago, right? Then, he must have received some severance pay?
At Rika's words, Jason also had a realization.
Exactly. With Dad's years of service, he must have received a decent amount. Yeah. So, if they get divorced, all that money belongs to father-in-law, right? That's great. I'm relieved. Of course. It's Dad's, our money.
Jason and Rika were jubilant, as if the world revolved around them.
Income earned after marriage is considered marital property and is subject to division.
Probably.
Huh? What's that supposed to mean? It's Dad's money.
Really? How awful.
How greedy can you be?
We're already divorced, right? We're strangers.
And yet, talking about sharing and taking the money, that's ridiculous.
Jason and Rika were indignant, conveniently ignoring their own actions. Dealing with them was becoming increasingly irritating. I took a deep breath to calm myself and stated firmly.
First of all, there's hardly any severance pay left. What? Why? Mike only worked at his last company for a few years. So, there wasn't much severance pay to begin with.
Mike had frequently changed jobs, citing too much stress or poor relationships. In short, he never stayed long at any job.
Like father, like son. Damn! Isn't there any savings? Even Mom's savings, come on! That's subject to division, right? Your freeloading these past few months has significantly depleted them. Plus, depending on the situation, I might also claim alimony from Mike.
Mike, suddenly brought into the conversation, timidly spoke up.
Alimony? Why? Because you've been splurging on some young thing, right? Infidelity is a valid reason for adultery. Even if there wasn't any, causing the divorce puts you at a disadvantage. If there's been misuse of savings, you'll have to repay that.
Mike trembled, his eyes faintly brimming with tears. It seemed clear there was something to feel guilty about.
So, Dad is pretty much broke after all.
It seems so. The adult children shivered and exchanged glances before Jason forcefully grabbed Mike by the chest.
It's your fault. How could you deceive us like this? Trying to live with us without any money.
Mike brushed Jason's hand away.
Quiet. You're the ones who invited me. Let's live together in an apartment and lead a luxurious life. I just agreed to it. Who would want to live with a broke old man? Ah, damn it. What are we supposed to do about the apartment payments now?
An ugly dispute between parent and child had begun right before my eyes. It seemed to be a misunderstanding that arose because both were relying on each other's money. It was absurd.
Well, I'm not involved. I'll contact you through my lawyer later.
As I waved my hand dismissively, Rika desperately approached me.
You can't be serious. Leaving it like this? He's your ex-husband and your son. I've said it many times. We're strangers now. Don't call me mother-in-law. But, besides, you were the ones who kept saying we're strangers. Don't worry. I'm not concerned about your address anymore. We're strangers, after all.
I thought I heard Rika cry out wait, but I decided it was just my imagination and walked away. Afterward, although proving infidelity was difficult, Mike's misuse of funds came to light, and the remaining savings became mine. The adult children had no way to pay for the apartment and soon had to move to a cheaper place. Not only was the move a waste of money, but the expensive furniture and appliances they bought on credit left them struggling with payments. Rika had to increase her part-time work, but it wasn't enough, and she was even considering working at night. Also, the couple has been fighting non-stop since then, even considering divorce. As for Mike, the young woman he was chasing married someone else easily. After all I gave her, he complained before causing a scene and getting the police called on him. Disheartened, he came crawling back to me.
You're the only one who understands me.
Drunk on his self-pity, he begged, so I simply replied, I'd rather not understand, and blocked him. He can indulge himself all he wants, just not at my expense. The biggest reason I married Mike was because he let me be free. But looking back on 30 years, I was anything but free. He just didn't want any inconvenience for himself. I suppose that's why he so firmly refused anything that seemed like trouble, including raising our child. He probably didn't like his routine being disrupted. I'm grateful to Mike and Jason for one thing, though. Their actions made me endure a lot of hardships and discomfort. Thanks to them, I now feel incredibly liberated and free on my own. I never want to see them again, but I'm proud of how I handled myself then, and I feel I've grown from it. From now on, I'll cherish myself and live my remaining life as freely as I can, without bothering anyone else.